Okay, so Nick, what are the most significant inefficiencies that you have identified in the current data center industry?
So the largest inefficiencies currently in the data center industry, I would start with the chillers, which is the obvious one, or mechanical-based, compressor-based cooling. If we can find ways to go away from chillers and move on to evaporative cooling, and even more importantly, to dry coolers, so they don't use water at all, that's definitely the first step. To do that, we need systems that will be able to be warm water cooled, meaning, and what is warm water cooled? Well, it really depends on your location and on your climate. Basically, if you're in a location that can be cooled using a dry cooler for all year long, you're in a very good position to be able to deploy warm water cooling and save a significant amount of energy on your cooling system themselves.
You have developed liquid cooling systems for HP. Is this kind of system a technical solution that is only applicable to high performance computing, or will it eventually become available as standard equipment?
Well, obviously, the Apollo platform is made to be a leading edge high performance computing platform from the get go. I mean, you're looking at 80, 100 kilowatt a rack kind of range. So that's obviously very high density and very high computing capability with integrated, very fast networking and everything. All of that being said, we're getting a lot of interest from what you would call those commercial or enterprise HPC customers that may not require the accelerators, that may not require InfiniBand or the very fast networks, but more like Xeon processors with 10 gig Ethernet, and they're pulling us because they're looking for the efficiency, they're looking for the density, and they're also looking for the performance increase and the performance stability. The goodness of having liquid cooling is that you're going to distribute a very uniform cooling medium to all of the processors evenly, which you will never get in an air-cooled data center where you have hot spots, you have issues managing airflow. On a liquid-cooled system that doesn't require any air from the outside, you get very uniform performance, and those customers like that a whole lot.
So a lot of talk also about the power supply to the data center. So you've mentioned that there is a lot of issues related to alternating current versus direct current, as well as the possibility of integrating fuel cells in the data center.
Well, obviously, where this high voltage DC comes from, well, you need to start from the fact that at the board level, the components will run at various DC levels. So once that is established, if you look at today's power supply, most power supply will have a first stage that is a rectifier that will make high voltage DC inside of the power supply, and then you have a step down phase that will step down from the 360s, 380s DC down to the various sub 12 volt, 5 volt, 3.3 volts that you need at the board level. So that's a server statement. Now, when you look at a lot of the alternative energy components that are coming out, think solar cells, well, they're all actually producing DC power. Batteries are also DC based. So when you put all of that into the equation, you have alternative energy sources that are producing high voltage DC. You have batteries that want to run at DC. And then you have computers that is fundamentally DC equipment, but the transmission medium in between is all AC. So all of that inversion and rectification actually really makes little sense, and that's why we're now driving the industry to go and move to high voltage DC so that we save all of those conversion steps.
What about the fuel cells? Is that in something that may be feasible in the near future?
So fuel cells are something of reality today. Now, as of today's technology, the cost of entry is still a little bit high, so they need to catch on volume. They need to have more traction in terms of market accessibility and people buying them, basically. But fuel cells are pretty amazing in many ways. First, they're much more efficient at storing energy than any batteries. That's the number one thing. Two, they can generate DC, and they'll be very happy with that. But second, and just as importantly is that fuel cells can be cooled actually with the outlet water of a warm water cooled computer. So think about your computer I was just mentioning before that would have say 25C or 30C water inlet that you can produce with a dry cooler in a lot of locations year round. That computer water outlet is going to be like 40C or 45C, and that's plenty cool enough to go cool a fuel cell, who will then generate water in the 60s, 70s, maybe possibly even in the low 80s. And now you got a really nice heat source for both doing heat recapture, but also even to use an absorption cooler to generate chilling capability in the summertime. So I think fuel cells are kind of like the missing links right now between the computer and the district heating that we'll be able to leverage and not only provide backup capability, but the cooling aspect, the gap in between the computer and the district heating that we've been looking for.